Have you ever noticed that the men who don't chase get chased? It's not magic, it's psychology. Women are naturally drawn to men who move with purpose, who don't beg for attention, and who value themselves enough to walk away if energy isn't matched. Today, I'm breaking down the number one simple way to trigger a woman's attraction without trying. And once you master this, you'll stop chasing because you won't need to. When it comes to attraction, especially from a woman who values depth and emotional maturity, the foundation is not charm, looks, money, or perfect lines. It is your level of self-respect and emotional discipline. These two qualities do not just make you attractive, they make you magnetic in a way that feels natural, unforced, and effortless. A man who respects himself doesn't chase validation, doesn't beg for attention, and doesn't lose himself in the presence of someone he's attracted to. He stands firm in who he is, and that energy alone creates curiosity and emotional pull. Self-respect begins with knowing your worth. If you believe you are worthy of love, attention, and loyalty, you will not tolerate inconsistent behavior or emotionally draining dynamics. You won't be shaken by silence, mixed signals, or temporary distance. Instead of overreacting or questioning your value, you remain composed. Women pay close attention to this. Emotional stability signals maturity, strength, and leadership, qualities deeply rooted in masculine energy. When you operate from this mindset, you're saying, without uttering a word, I am valuable and I do not need external validation to feel good about myself. Emotional discipline is what supports this self-respect. Attraction is not just about how you act when things go well, it's how you handle moments of uncertainty, delay, or disappointment. Most men panic when they feel they might lose a woman's attention. They overtext, overcall, or overprove themselves. Instead of becoming more attractive, they become anxious, reactive, and clingy. But a man with emotional discipline responds differently. He breathes, he observes, he gives space instead of suffocating the situation. His calm nature communicates strength. It shows he trusts himself and trusts the flow of the connection. Women are instinctively drawn to emotional strength because it creates safety. A woman can romantically admire looks, humor, or social status, but she emotionally attaches to stability. When you don't crumble under pressure, when you manage your emotions instead of letting them control you, you show her that you are reliable. And reliability is attractive on a biological and psychological level. It signals that you are capable of leading, protecting, and maintaining composure in real-life situations, not just romantic ones. Another aspect of self-respect is having standards. A lot of men have preferences, but no standards. Preferences are what you want. Standards are what you require. A man with self-respect doesn't adjust his standards out of fear of losing someone. He chooses a partner who reciprocates effort, respects boundaries, and aligns with his values. This isn't about being rigid or controlling. It's about stability and self-honor. When you hold yourself to a certain level of emotional and behavioral integrity, you naturally attract people who align with that energy. Women notice how you treat yourself. They notice how you speak about your goals, how you prioritize your time, how you respond to challenges, and how you handle emotional moments. If you crumble under pressure, constantly seek external approval, or attach your worth to someone else's attention, you signal emotional weakness. But when you manage your inner world with strength and clarity, something shifts. She begins to lean in, observe more, admire more, and invest emotionally without being asked. Self-respect and emotional discipline are not loud qualities. They are quiet and powerful. They show up in your silence, your patience, your restraint, your tone, your decisions, and your boundaries. You don't need to yell your value. You simply live it. That quiet confidence sparks attraction far deeper than superficial effort ever could. When you respect yourself and manage your emotions with strength, you don't chase connection. Connection naturally gravitates toward you. One of the most powerful yet overlooked elements of male attractiveness is the presence of clear standards and healthy boundaries. Many men misunderstand attraction and believe that being overly available, overly flexible, or endlessly agreeable will make a woman see them as desirable and reliable. But in reality, the opposite happens. When a man has no boundaries, when he constantly compromises his needs to please a woman, he doesn't seem loving. He seems insecure. Women are naturally drawn to men who know what they want, what they accept, and what they will not tolerate because those qualities reveal self-worth and emotional strength. Standards are not about perfection or demanding control. They are about self-respect. A man's standards speak to how he lives, chooses, and behaves. For example, a man with standards values honesty, effort, consistency, and emotional intelligence. He doesn't entertain chaos. He doesn't chase someone who is unsure about him. He doesn't give his energy where there is no reciprocation. A man like this doesn't need to announce his standards loudly. He simply lives by them. His actions show that he values his time, his peace, and his purpose. This quiet strength communicates more than any words could. Boundaries, on the other hand, are the lines that protect your emotional, mental, and personal space. They are not walls, they are filters. Healthy boundaries help you build real connections instead of draining ones. A man with boundaries does not fear saying no when something goes against his values or emotional well-being. He does not keep giving chances to disrespect or inconsistency just because he feels attracted. He doesn't bend himself to fit into someone's life. He chooses someone who wants to align and build with him. Women feel secure around a man who respects himself enough to uphold his boundaries because it signals emotional maturity and inner stability. A lot of men lose attraction not because they lack charm or personality, but because they lack a backbone. They let someone else's attention or affection dictate their worth, and the moment they start acting from fear of losing her, fear of not being enough, fear of being alone, they lose their grounding. Women can sense this shift immediately. A woman may be flattered temporarily by a man who worships her, but she does not feel deeply attracted to him unless he also values himself. Attraction grows when a woman knows she cannot walk all over a man emotionally, when she sees that he is kind but not weak, giving but not self-abandoning. Having standards also means having clarity. You know what kind of energy and behavior you want in your life, and you do not settle for less just because you feel lonely or infatuated. You value emotional peace over temporary attention. When a man has clarity in his values and chooses from strength, not fear, he becomes attractive without trying. Women admire a man who has direction, who has preferences rooted in self-respect, and who does not compromise his integrity for anyone, including her. Boundaries are also attractive because they teach how to treat you. When you allow disrespect, inconsistency, or neglect, you silently train others that they can mistreat you without consequence. But when you calmly withdraw from situations that don't meet your standards, you show emotional intelligence and self-worth. You don't need to argue or prove yourself. You simply hold your line. This kind of composure builds respect and curiosity because it signals that you are emotionally self-sufficient, not dependent. Women feel more drawn to a man who protects his peace and protects his energy because he shows he values himself. And someone who values themselves naturally becomes someone others value too. There is a noticeable difference between a man who likes a woman and a man who needs her. One makes her feel chosen, the other makes her feel burdened. Women are instinctively drawn to men who show interest but do not cling emotionally, spiritually, or mentally. When a man radiates non-needy energy, he isn't cold or distant. He simply isn't dependent. He values connection but does not rely on it for his identity, validation, or emotional stability. This calm, self-secured presence creates curiosity and attraction because it signals strength, independence, and inner fulfillment. Needy behavior often comes disguised as affection, constant messaging, overly intense compliments, trying too hard to always be available, rearranging your entire life for someone you barely know, or prioritizing her approval above your own peace. While these actions may stem from genuine attraction, they communicate something deeper: fear. Fear of losing her, fear of not being enough, fear that if you don't do everything, she won't stay. That fear turns into pressure. No woman wants to feel responsible for a man's emotional stability. The moment a woman senses that a man's confidence is tied to her response, interest often begins to fade. Non-needy energy, on the other hand, isn't about being dismissive or indifferent. It's about knowing your worth independent of external attention. A man with this energy doesn't seek constant reassurance. He already feels grounded in who he is. He doesn't rush emotional intimacy or force the connection. He lets it grow naturally. He gives space without anxiety. He remains consistent without smothering. He is present, but not dependent. This balanced approach makes a woman feel safe to lean in because she sees a man who can stand alone and still choose her, not one who clings because he fears being alone. One of the most attractive signals a man can give is emotional self-control. when he doesn't crumble at delayed replies, doesn't panic at small disagreements, and doesn't chase validation when energy shifts, he silently communicates maturity. He shows she is a part of his world, not the center of it. That composure is rare, and rarity creates value. When a woman cannot easily read a man, she becomes more curious. When she feels his presence but not his dependence, she feels drawn to understand him more deeply. Non-needy energy also reflects discipline and self-connection. A man who invests in his goals, health, hobbies, and purpose naturally becomes more attractive. He has a life, a meaningful one, outside of romantic interest. Women admire men who nurture themselves emotionally, mentally, and physically. His sense of fulfillment doesn't come from being needed, it comes from growth, stability, and inner alignment. When a man has a strong relationship with himself, every relationship around him becomes healthier. He doesn't chase love, he attracts it. This energy also establishes emotional equality. Women want connection, not captivity. They want attention, not obsession. When a man balances interest with independence, he gives a woman room to miss him, to appreciate him, and to invest effort too. Attraction thrives in space, in calm confidence, in emotional self-security. When you aren't constantly trying to prove yourself, you give her the opportunity to choose you willingly, and that choice becomes powerful when it is mutual, not one-sided. A man who practices non-needy energy doesn't fear losing someone who isn't aligned. He trusts that the right connection will stay and grow. That confidence becomes his quiet magnetism. Women feel drawn to it, not because he tries to impress, but because he doesn't need to. He simply is someone worth being curious about, someone worth pursuing, someone worth staying close to. There is something incredibly compelling about a man who wakes up every day with direction, with a mission, with a sense of where he is going and why he is going there. Women are naturally drawn to men who are deeply connected to their purpose because purpose creates presence, confidence, emotional grounding, and ambition, all qualities that signal long-term strength and leadership. A man focused on building his life does not need to chase affection to feel valuable. His fulfillment doesn't come from being liked. It comes from his progress, his discipline, and the impact he is working toward. This energy, calm yet focused, magnetic yet grounded, is far more attractive than any effort rooted in desperation or constant pursuit. Many men unknowingly push women away by making them the center of their world too soon. They stop focusing on their goals, they adjust their schedule entirely for someone new, they prioritize romance above growth, and they begin to lose the very qualities that made them interesting in the first place. Instead of leading their life, they start orbiting someone else's. And the moment a man loses his center, he loses his power. Women may appreciate attention, but they deeply respect a man whose life continues to move with momentum, a man who doesn't abandon ambition for infatuation. When she sees you living with intention, she understands that your life has meaning beyond her existence, which makes your attention valuable, not predictable or excessive. A purpose-driven man doesn't avoid relationships, he simply doesn't sacrifice his life's mission for them. His dreams, goals, and personal standards remain a priority. When a woman realizes that she is entering a life of progress, not becoming a rescue project or a distraction, she feels admiration. It shows maturity. It shows direction. It shows that you don't need someone to shape your journey. You already have one. A man with purpose is not controlled by emotions or momentary desires. He is guided by vision, and vision builds attraction because it builds trust. If you can lead yourself, you can eventually lead a family, a home, a future. Being purpose-driven also builds emotional resilience. When your confidence comes from what you are achieving, not who is validating you, you become less reactive, less insecure, and less needy. You don't crumble if someone pulls away. You don't panic when attention shifts. You continue moving, building, improving. That stability makes you magnetic. Women feel safest with men who are steady. Steady in goals, steady in emotions, steady in their journey. A steady man doesn't chase. He attracts by continuing to move forward with quiet determination. His actions speak louder than words, and his growth becomes undeniable. Purpose also fuels self-respect. When you are committed to something meaningful, you naturally maintain standards. You don't waste time on drama, on temporary attention, or on people who lack reciprocity. You protect your energy because you understand its worth. You choose your company with intention, and you value connections that add depth, not distraction. This selective energy signals that you are not just seeking someone, you are building something, and you want a partner, not an escape plan. Women feel more drawn to men who have something to offer emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and nothing offers more than a man who is grounded in his vision. A purpose-driven man creates his life rather than waiting to be chosen into someone else's story. He knows who he is becoming and walks toward that version every day. That forward motion, even if slow, even if imperfect, ignites attraction naturally. Women admire a man who is becoming better, who is building, striving, evolving, and refusing to settle for mediocrity. She becomes curious not because he chases her, but because he chases greatness. And that is the type of man women respect, desire, and emotionally gravitate toward. Real confidence is not loud, forced, or performative. It does not come from being admired, praised, or chosen. True confidence is rooted in a man's internal sense of self, his understanding of his worth, his belief in his own capabilities, and his emotional independence. Confidence that relies on external approval is fragile and temporary. It rises when someone shows interest and collapses when attention fades. But confidence built on self-value is steady, calm, and lasting. And this is the kind of confidence that women are drawn to deeply and instinctively. Many men misunderstand confidence and try to build it through external means, compliments, attention, validation, and constant reassurance. They measure their masculinity by romantic success, social approval, or how others perceive them. When someone praises them, they feel powerful. When they are ignored or rejected, they feel insecure or unworthy. That is not confidence. That is dependence. A man who derives confidence from others lives in a state of emotional instability, always chasing the next moment of validation to feel secure again. This drains him and makes him appear needy rather than strong. Confidence rooted in self-value looks very different. It does not need an audience. It does not need constant proof. It is built privately through discipline, self-respect, purpose, and inner growth. A man who values himself does not crumble when someone doesn't choose him. He does not become desperate when attention shifts. He does not seek constant validation because he moves through the world with the belief that he is enough. Women sense this energy immediately. It creates emotional safety and attraction because it shows inner stability, something rare and deeply appealing. Self-value is also reflected in how a man treats his time, his goals, and his boundaries. A man who truly values himself does not chase acceptance. He does not abandon his standards out of loneliness, nor does he allow himself to stay where he is not valued or respected. He chooses relationships and environments that honor him. He invests in his growth and protects his peace. When a man treats himself as someone valuable, others begin to treat him the same way. Not because he demands respect, but because he embodies it quietly and consistently. Confidence built from self-worth is calm. It does not need to prove superiority. It doesn't try to impress. It doesn't compete for attention. It simply exists. Women are drawn to this type of calm confidence because it feels secure, reliable, and emotionally mature. It signals strength without aggression, humility without self-doubt, power without arrogance. This balance creates attraction that feels natural rather than forced. On the other hand, when a man constantly seeks validation, his energy becomes anxious and reactive. He overthinks, overinvests too soon, and becomes emotionally dependent on how someone responds to him. This creates pressure rather than attraction. Women can sense when a man's confidence is fragile, when he feels good only if she approves, texts back quickly, or compliments him. That kind of insecurity may feel flattering at first, but it quickly becomes suffocating and unattractive because it signals emotional immaturity and lack of self-trust. A man who values himself understands that attention is not currency and validation is not love. He knows that someone liking him does not make him worthy, and someone rejecting him does not make him unworthy. His confidence is built from within, from his character, discipline, personal growth, achievements, and integrity. He doesn't need to be chosen to feel complete. He already is whole. And when a man lives from that place of inner wholeness, he becomes magnetic without trying. Women do not want to complete a man. They are attracted to a man who is already complete within himself. One of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction is space. Many men assume that the more attention, effort, and presence they give, the more a woman will feel drawn to them. But attraction does not work like that. Sometimes presence creates comfort, and sometimes it creates pressure. When interest is genuine but given excessively, a woman begins to feel emotionally crowded instead of emotionally inspired. Silence and space, when used with maturity and intention, can communicate confidence, emotional independence, and depth in a way that words and constant attention simply cannot. Silence is not about ignoring someone or playing manipulative games. It is about honoring yourself enough to not constantly chase reassurance or proximity. It is the discipline of allowing connection to breathe naturally. When you don't rush to fill every pause, when you don't panic at distance, when you don't force constant availability, you communicate something powerful. You are comfortable within yourself. A man who is emotionally secure does not fear silence. He does not need constant conversation to feel valued. He allows moments of quiet without assuming loss, rejection, or insecurity. That emotional steadiness signals maturity, and maturity is deeply attractive. Women pay close attention to energy shifts. If a man becomes excessively eager, overly accessible, or emotionally dependent, she may feel overwhelmed or lose curiosity. But when a man gives space, not because he is withdrawing or punishing, but because he lives a balanced life with purpose, goals, and inner peace, she senses emotional stability. That space makes her reflect, think, and appreciate. It invites her to engage voluntarily instead of reacting to pressure. A woman is naturally more drawn to a man she chooses, not one who forces connection every moment. Silence also protects your dignity during emotionally uncertain moments. Instead of over-explaining, begging, or chasing when energy shifts, a composed pause often speaks louder. It shows that you do not collapse when attention fluctuates. You do not need to fight for a place that is not naturally being offered. Your silence demonstrates self-respect without hostility. A man who responds calmly and patiently instead of emotionally overreacting stands out. His restraint communicates strength far deeper than aggressive pursuit ever could. Space can create emotional desire because desire requires room to grow. Constant contact does not give emotional energy time to build. When a woman wonders what you are doing, when she senses you are living your life and not waiting for her validation, she becomes curious. Curiosity leads to interest, and interest fuels attraction. Space reminds her that you are not dependent, that you value your time, your life, and your peace. And when someone feels your energy moving forward regardless of their attention, it creates gravity. She is drawn not because you are chasing, but because you are centered. Healthy space is not abandonment. It is not emotional punishment. It is not passive-aggressive withdrawal. It is the natural rhythm of two individuals connecting while still honoring themselves. You do not disappear to manipulate. You simply don't overextend. You let her come toward you as much as you move toward her. In doing so, you build a balanced dynamic where interest is mutual, effort is shared, and attraction grows steadily instead of burning out quickly. Silence and space teach emotional boundaries without confrontation. They allow a woman to see your value without you having to constantly display it. They show that your world does not shrink for validation, and your confidence does not depend on constant reassurance. A man who uses space with emotional intelligence becomes mysterious without trying, powerful without forcing, and desirable without needing to prove anything.